the Center for Management Studies of Dibrugarh University jointly organized a talk on the topic Leadership in the Post-Pandemic Era, Time to Look Beyond Traditional Ideas of Leadership with the SJC Trust on 2nd September 2022. The keynote speaker in the talk was Professor B. Mahadevan. Professor B. Mahadevan is a professor of operations management at the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, where he has been teaching since 1992. Professor Mahadevan has about 3 decades of wide-ranging experience in teaching, research, consulting, and academic administration at IIM Bangalore and other reputed institutions such as IIT Delhi and XLRI Jamshedpur. He was a visiting scholar at the Amos Tuck School of Business Administration, Dartmouth College, New Hampshire. He was also a retainer consultant to Deloitte Consulting LLP of USA. He was earlier the chief editor of the IIMB Management Review. Professor Mahadevan's research interests include researching the possibility of using ancient Indian wisdom to address contemporary concerns, spirituality in the workplace, and management paradigms from Bhagavad Gita. In traditional areas of management, the research interests include design of service systems in customer co-creation of value and order allocation issues in electronic markets. Professor Mahadevan was the founder Vice Chancellor of Chinmaya Vishwavidyapeeth, a university for applied Sanskrit and Indian wisdom during the years 2016 to 2018. The chairperson of the Center for Management Studies, Professor Kumud Chandra Goswami, welcomed Professor Mahadevan and others in the audience.
Professor B. Mahadevan, he is an eminent professor in operation management, IIM Bangalore. He has been all the way to come over here in spite of his so much of busy schedule. So I welcome you, sir.
Madam Jalan and Professor Kumud Chandra Goswami to kindly felicitate Professor B. Mahadevan. Noted industrialist and trustee of the SJC Trust, Mr. Manoj Jalan, also welcomed Professor Mahadevan.
It's indeed a great pleasure for me to be amongst all of you this afternoon and to be a part of the lecture program being addressed by Professor Mahadevan.
Professor B. Mahadevan is a professor of operations management at the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, where he has been teaching since 1992. Professor Mahadevan was the founder Vice Chancellor of Chinmaya Vishwavidyapeeth, a university for applied Sanskrit and Indian wisdom during the years 2016 to 2018.
I'm very happy to see all of you because what is going to make a difference to your life is not the job or the visiting card or all that. It's a certain perspective that you take to life that gives you phenomenal satisfaction and you feel very successful. That's the issue I want to talk about. To me, leadership has a certain slightly different perspective and so on. So I thought let's talk about the pandemic and what the pandemic has left behind us, and in that context let's talk about what should we actually do, because I think there are certain issues. But the first thing that we need to all understand, 1000 years later we can have one more lecture here, we will say all these. Leadership is always impactful. That's why it is called leadership. It has the capability to make or break. It all depends on what happens, right? And leaders can either tear the moral and ethical fabric, or they build a great culture. All these are why leadership is important. So that's the first thing is, leadership is impactful. Positive, negative, I do not know. It all depends on what kind of a leadership we have. But it is impactful. That's the first thing that we need to understand. And we will continue to have leadership crisis. Don't think everything will get over now that we have a nice prime minister, everything will be all right next year. Nothing like that. In Mahabharata time also we had a leadership crisis. And we will have leadership crisis today, we will have leadership crisis. I mean, this is something which we need to think through very clearly. That's the point I'm trying to make. That we need to understand, society always have great leaders. We need to understand where they are and who they are and what they are. That is the challenge. People who got it. People who don't get it, they continue to see leadership challenges. So this will also go on. These issues are permanent. You and I may not be permanent. We are all, mortal. These issues are immortal. They will continue for years to come. And leadership, to me, there is only one word for leadership. If people are not inspirational, they can never be leaders. It's not about power or position. We'll see all that. Leadership, to me, the key word is being inspirational, because it's very contagious. Such leaders leave a tremendous impact and go. And it takes a while before that impact recedes to the background. So therefore, leadership is all about inspirational. It can create an impact, positive or negative, we have to decide, depending upon which side of the story we are in. And we will continue to search leaders and understand what leadership is. So the only thing that I want to say is, while these issues will remain, the context may change. So the only new thing is, because of a certain context, we may start asking questions slightly differently, or we may find answers which may appear a little different and so on, because we emphasize something more at some time, maybe emphasize less something else some other times, and so on. So today the context is pandemic. So let me very quickly, sometimes it's not good to talk too much about pandemic, because then it may appear gloomy. It is not. There is a lot of positive things which also we need to take, but let me put a few things straight. So let's little bit talk about the corona crisis, and then let us understand from a business management perspective, what is it that it has left behind for us. Only that. I'm not going to talk about the biochemistry of corona and all that, or the vaccines. That's none of our business here. I'm looking at it from a business perspective. This is the most recent report, World Development Report 2022, which came a few months back, I think, maybe two months back, May or something, I think. And I was actually going through this report, and when this lecture came, I remember some of these. If you look at, there is something very interesting here. In the last 120 years, 1901 to 2021, the x-axis says the share of countries experiencing negative growth. The tallest point is COVID-19. None of the other depressions, none of the other things have taken it that tall. Please understand this. Not Second World War, not the Great Depression of 1930s. All those are 50%, 60%, up to 80%. Whereas the last curve that you see, COVID-19, it says 95% of the countries in the world have experienced a negative growth. This is what we are going through. The virus attack, the Spanish flu 100 years back did not create this much impact. This is the first point I want to make. We all have experienced it in our own ways. But I'm saying it's not just in India. It has created such a global impact in terms of how it has affected. There are a lot of charts like this. I'm not going to bring all the charts. Just one or two I want to show, just to get a sense of what has it done. Here you have 4 color codes. Dark blue, which is high income. A little grayish teal, which is upper middle income. Then blue color, which is low. India belongs to the blue color. So whatever I say about India, you should look at the blue color actually, dot. And there are low income, some sub-Saharan African countries which will come in the low income and so on. If you look at here, we'll concentrate only on the blue for the time being. 30% only 30% could complete the school assignments. 45% skipped meals. Okay? About 30% stopped working. Received partial no payment, 60%, 55 to 60%. and received less in remittance, around 60%. Experienced reduced total income, 70%. This is what we have all gone through. The pandemic has shown us a certain aspect of life which we just took for granted. It just came and then it's sort of created a certain kind of a havoc. And it is in terms of what happened to our day-to-day living, what happened to our ability to have a meaningful, a certain level of satisfaction and fulfillment, and all that were challenged in the last 2 years. Every segment I see, I used to wonder what is happening. I have been seeing these 1 year, 2 year to 4 year children, or 3 year to 5 year children. They think classroom is a white screen. Small white screen is their notion of classroom. UKG, LKG, they found it extremely difficult to go to a classroom this year. So every segment, you have the 10th, 11th, 12th students, I know what they went through. IAM Bangalore students paid 30 lakhs, never saw IAM. They saw it virtually and went. These kinds of things, everywhere, all kinds of challenges we all have faced actually. Again, this talks about the, if you look at this, it talks about the average percentage of, transfer protocols, average capital transfer pre-crisis, all of them are falling. There is a crunch of capital, jobs are not there, salary came down, so you have to skip the meals, all these. So it is not an economic problem, it is a socio-economic problem of a larger magnitude which we have experienced in the last 2 years. This is again from the World Bank. It says 1/4 of the companies saw their sales fall 50%, minimum 50% sales fall. On an average, sales dropped by 27%. 65% of business adjusted payroll by reducing work hours, wages or granting leave. There are in some European countries they work for 3 days. Beyond that it makes no sense to work. In markets are not there, what are you going to do? Are you going to create inventory and then keep it somewhere? We all have gone through all those kinds of issues and so on. 11% of companies laid off workers. These kinds of data are there, and there are some more average changes in the sales. All of them are in the negative region. The chart is not at the top, the chart is penetrating the bottom. Minus 20%, minus 30%, minus 50% and those kinds of things from the peak up to 12 months post-peak. Like these kinds of reports are there. I just wanted to show you a little bit of these kinds of reports. Just to tell you that this pandemic, we have weathered it. In our own ways, we have weathered it. We have taken whatever has come. The most important thing is we have learned from it. Otherwise, it is not worth all these. We have really learned from what has this taught us. What is it that we have to take from this? There is, that is the value of a crisis also. Crisis we have to go through, but at least there is some value out of it. I was a consultant for Deloitte on business model innovation. So first week, the model was, I used to, Friday we'll have a meeting. On Wednesday, I'll send a PPT. Because I was their consultant, so they said, Professor, we want to, because I just published a paper on business model innovation, that's why they came to me. First week, I sent 3 slides, just 3 slides. First slide was called Brahma, second slide was called Vishnu, third slide was Shiva. So these all, and they're all from, New Jersey and Chicago and, so they just went fat. They said, what is this? I said, your entire business model innovation lies here. In fact, we did the business model innovation. That framework to me is Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. I am able to see the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva in a business model innovation. I will talk about only the Shiva today because we are getting out of the pandemic. The word Shiva in Sanskrit, Shiva is a Sanskrit word. Shiva means good, Mangala. Shankara. See, if you take I told the Americans, we have a synonym of 1008 names. We call it a Sahasranama. For every god, we have 1008 names of synonyms. I told 70% of names for Shiva, okay, is only good. Sham karoti iti Shankaraha. Sham bhavati iti Shambho. Sham means good. Only good will happen. But every time I told the Americans, in our scheme of things, he is a god of destruction. They never understood. It took a while for them to understand. The Shiva Tattva is very important for somebody to progress. I call it as creative destruction. The Corona Mahamari has done the destruction. Now we have to do a creative part of it, out of it. That's a lesson we have to learn. There is a Shiva Tattva in this country which we have to understand. It's called creative destruction. Destruction is not bad all the time. It is bad. Some people suffer, a few people go down the drain, all that happens. But at the end of it, something will happen. So the creative destruction is what we have to now start thinking about. There is no point in looking at what has happened. That is like driving a car looking at a rear view mirror. Never drive a car looking at the rear view mirror, you will just bang. Look at the front and drive. That is past. Rear view mirror, what it shows? It showed the path you came. You have to look at the front. So today is occasion for us to put this behind, but learn from that. And say, what are we supposed to do? What have we learned? With all the trouble that we have gone through, and God has been lucky, we are all surviving. Last year by this time, I know several families in Bangalore, 5 of them will go to the hospital, 4 will come. You can't do anything. Perfectly healthy people, 5 will go, 4 will come. Father gone or mother gone or some. And we have been lucky to be here. We have survived the pandemic. Now we need to ask, what is this? What are we going to do? So that is what I am going to do today. Now a few quick things from a business management perspective. I want to show a few things that is going to happen, which will take a few years for us to understand. Demand is not going to grow the way we saw it. It's not going to happen like that. Because salaries are coming down, so therefore people have less money to spend, how much of loaning you can do and all that. Demand, I am telling globally, not just India. This is what is going to happen. Demand is not going to grow. We thought it will grow. It is not going to grow like that. We have to face that reality first. Obviously, it has its own set of activities which will follow one after the other. Business activities have to shrink a little bit because demand is not going to grow. Correct? If there are industries, they will pile up inventory because you don't want to stop working. You keep working. So you produce motorcycles and then keep them in a shed because demand is not going to go. So inventory will little bit pile up. All these will add up to the cost of business. All these are business impact. Nobody can run away from that. Right? And so after some time the cost is so much, so then they start saying, how do we cut the cost, or do we send a few people out? These kinds of things business always do. So attritions and salary cuts and all that will happen. That in turn means disposable income is less because few people are without job. So it is only adding fuel, salt to the wound. So the demand will further. So this vicious circle for a while we will go through. We can't escape from it. Let's face it, let's understand it. Rather than looking at the other way. This will happen for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Things may look to be coming up and so on, but the rate at which we will grow will not be like what it was before we did. And this is what will happen. So therefore companies will actually ask, should I make major new investments or not? Because it doesn't seem to make any sense and so on. So therefore people will start again talking about how do we improve productivity, how do I bring down cost, how do I do better innovation. Lot of innovation has already happened. In fact, Americans are stunned, the whole world is stunned on seeing India now, because you can buy 3 rupees worth of coriander leaf, take your mobile and do a Deeparadhana like this, right? Arati, you can do an Arati. None of the Western countries know this UPI business. India has done phenomenal innovation. Every crisis will put a wave of innovation. Foreigners have not understood how for 1.3 crore people you can maintain their certification of the vaccination, trace them and find out where they are, whether they have got the first dose or second dose. We have done wave of innovation. Digital finance, India leads the world today. You go to any American website or a European website, they will ask for your credit card. Whereas here you can do a Arati, QR code, and that's it. We have done a lot of innovation. Innovation will happen. Lot more innovation will happen. That's the only way that we will go. All these are going to happen. Youngsters, I want you to be ready thinking about it. Rather than saying, oh, what will happen, this will happen, that will. That's not the way. Destruction will happen. Out of it, creative things will happen. That's the Shiva Tattva. So we have to be ready for the Shiva Tattva. Shiva has played out now. So now, the Brahma and the Vishnu will come later. Through the destruction, you will get new creation, and then protection of that will happen and so on. This is on the business side. But more importantly, on individual side, certain things have happened. Those who have worked have experienced it strongly. Those who have seen as children have experienced it partly. So let me explain what it is. The biggest thing that working people have gone through, business people have gone through, is what I call as fear of the unknown. The biggest challenge in pandemic was not the pandemic. The biggest thing was, we don't know what will happen tomorrow. Will it third wave will come? Will the third wave will be 2 times the second wave? This is what we have lived for 2 years. It is the uncertainty. Uncertainty is very difficult to handle. So it is a fear of the unknown, which because of pay cuts, job losses, professional expectations are on one side. Let me explain all of them. So the moment you have a fear of unknown, obviously there is a mental stress. After all, we are individuals, we have our own mind. So we have to go through a bit of a stress. Nobody can run away from that. It is not that you have a switch, you can switch it off after some time. When you want, you switch it on. That's not like that. The mind works all the time. So therefore, mental stress, worries, people have been experiencing. Poor results on the job, because that will affect the job. Obviously it will affect the job. If I am not a very happy and a satisfied individual, what can I do on a job? I can't do much. Right? So that will result in low success rate. That increases risk of failure. I am worried now whether I will be sent because I am not producing results for no fault of mine. Still it happens. Right? So increased risk of failures. Fear of losing job increases, and that adds to the next wave of fear of the unknown. People have been going through it. It has not faded. Let me tell you. I am seeing it in Bangalore, which is supposed to be the very thriving kind of startup capital of the world. They are going through all this. Okay, they are genuine because of the fear of the unknown. This is the next thing that pandemic has done. So in a way, I have been seeing that there is a bit of a low morale and self-confidence, which are all little bit of shrinking, which are all very genuine. At the end of the day, I need to make sure my family is supported. No? I need to make sure that I don't lose my job. I mean, there's a lot of pressure people have been going through. Slightly the pressure has eased, but it has not gone completely yet. And sitting at home and working is actually complicated, because there are people who work from home, people work for home, work at home, all kinds of things are happening actually. So it has all complicated the issue. So the only way to step out of this chakkar that individuals are going through, we have to understand the basics of inspiration, which a leader can provide. We need to understand, develop a lot of self-belief, and we have to develop a lot of courage. And these are exclusive domains of Indian wisdom. Let me tell you, this is not available anywhere in the West. That's why West has fared very poorly in this crisis. Indians culturally are like this. Our Indian psychology and our scriptures are full of ideas only on this. How do you develop self-belief? How do you develop a certain mental courage and inspiration? This is very rich in our scriptures. And we have imbibed it knowingly, unknowingly, partly and otherwise, because we have lived a certain life here. And that living has also taught a little bit of this. I will only bring it in a more formal sense as to how it can make a huge difference to us today. It will shine like anything in an era of this kind of mental stress and so on. So the question is, where is the source for all this, and how will individuals actually, tap this? This is the crux of Indian wisdom. If people understand Indian wisdom properly, they will tap unlimited energy from them. They will come to the top. This is a global game in which this country is going to really come up. As I told you, this digital finance is just the tip of the iceberg. You just wait and see in 15 years. You may be part of that story in a much bigger way. We will actually catapult, convert a crisis into an opportunity, because culturally we are wired like that. And there are certain basics. I want to talk about those basics. And leadership will also come out of that. So a few things I have observed. When I have seen this pandemic closely watched as a professor of management, as a student of Indian Vedanta, I have wear different hats. With all that, I have seen this. What I find, crisis and shocks are undesirable. We don't have to discuss that. Certainly it is undesirable. But I can tell you it is entirely unavoidable. Don't think it is over. We do not know. 5 years later what will happen, 10 years later we don't know what will happen. Now the Ukraine and this Taiwan, there are two poles on which things are, geopolitical forces are moving. I don't know where it will go. I have absolutely no idea. So all that I am saying is crisis is undesirable. But if you ask me it is unavoidable, I do not know. So we should develop a certain frame of mind in which we are not praying for crisis. We are only saying, do I have that mental mettle to handle crisis? That's what Corona must have taught us. Amongst other things, it should have taught us that wisdom of life. The silver lining in any crisis is the emerging path of innovation. That's what I talked about, the creative destruction. So don't think destruction is always bad. It is bad, but it's not always bad, out of which something will happen. The Shiva Tattva will come, and that creates the trajectory for the Brahma and the Vishnu later. The new creation happens only when you are able to destroy. In companies, the biggest problem is they are not able to move an inch out of their mindset. If they cannot destroy their mindset, they will not make progress. That's why companies are not making progress. You need Shiva Tattva saying, I have to destroy the old mindset. Only then I will become progressive. Sometimes we are not able to do it. The external events make us to do it. So that's how we should understand this. Okay? This crisis also taught some very interesting things. We need a very different mindset to weather the crisis. The most important thing that I have noticed, I have also observed, is people issues at the end of the day matter a lot. We can have cutting edge technology. We can have artificial intelligence. We can have internet connectivity, all the UPI, all that we can have. What matters at the end of the day is people issues. Just give you an example. Let's say I have a very fancy equipment. There are 5, 6, buttons. If I press the first button, something very nice happens. If I press the second button, something it improvises even further. There are 5 buttons. The 5 buttons are good only as long as there is electricity which passes through them and make the gadget working. In the same way, you need technology, you need UPA, you need artificial intelligence, you need machine learning, all those are required. But the basic thing to succeed is people. Many have understood it. People issues matter a lot. People make a difference, whoever you have. So the first element of leadership which people have to understand today, it is people. Leaders, those who want to become leaders must understand people matter to me. And that's the way I should be able to handle it, otherwise we will not succeed in this kind of super crisis. It won't work. Inner strength is very important to face and respond challenges. In management schools, we teach a lot interpersonal communication, all that understanding others, communication, all those make no sense if you are not able to relate to yourself. If you don't have that, unlimited energy coiled inside coming out, you can never be a leader, whatever it may be. You will first collapse. First you will collapse. Then let us see about leadership later. That is called inner strength. Today people understood it. But then the Westerners don't know where is this inner strength. Whereas Indian literature is full of this discussion, out and out. You take Mahabharata, you take Gita, you take Ramayana, you take any Upanishad. I have read all these again and again. I find that this is the richest repository available to say how do I develop inner strength. The Vyaktitva Vikasa, it should blossom. Your personality must blossom. Right? That's very, very important. In fact, I remember this conversation. Vivekananda was walking on the streets. See, he went for a Parliament of Religions, Chicago. And a lot of people do bhiksha and then finally collected a purse and sent him. Some 1 or 2 kings from South India actually gave him a slightly bigger purse and finally they went. Unfortunately, the event got postponed by 2 months. So the money is all gone. Even today when you go for a overseas trip, you have to calculate and take that much money. A few days means you will dry up. So Vivekananda was having that dress which is little bit dirty because he didn't have much to change. He was walking on the road. So an American actually looked a strange creature here with this kind of a robe and so on. When he pulled his dress and so on, he replied in beautiful English. So this person asked, what man, you have such a poor personality? Commenting on his cloth, dirt and so on. Vivekananda replied, I never knew that in America the personality is built by the tailors. That's what he said. Oh, I didn't know that personality is actually built by tailors, by good dress and all that. That's not. Personality is inside. You have to get that out. That's the strength. This pandemic has taught us that. So leadership is all about carrying people through the journey. Now this carrying people is not easy. I mean, it's easier said. Carrying people is not carrying them on the head or anything like that. How do you take people along with you? That is the single most factor I have observed in the last 2 years. A few people who understood well have been able to carry on. Those who have not been able to understand, they have actually suffered in their own ways. They will have to gather and pick up and then start from there. So that's the point that I want to actually make here. With this background, let's look at leadership theory. Little bit the contemporary leadership theory a little bit, and then let me also say what else can we do. So today, if you ask what is leadership, these are the 3 bullets I will put. People think leadership is all about power and organizational mandate. There are 100 people working below me, 1,000 people reporting to me. I think I am a leader because I have the organizational mandate. I can write your ACR, annual confidential report, so that your promotion is decided depending upon, I decide your promotion. So it is a position with power. Seriously, 99% people think like that. I am not talking some weird idea. I have seen. This is what people think. Leadership is all about position, power and organizational mandate. The organization has given me the mandate to, sort of control you. Its resources at one's disposal. I can approve. That's another dimension of leadership.